What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about Bloodless, a retro action adventure with an emotional story and some interesting combat mechanics. But right here at the beginning of the video, I do need to inform you that this video is in fact sponsored by 3D Realms, the game's publisher, with the game itself being developed by Point and Sheep. And to that end, if you end up liking what you see here or you want to learn more about the game, there will be a link in the description below that you can click on to see all of those things for yourself. And what's more, I actually wanted to mention here that there is a demo available as well if you want to try the game out first. But this video should be going live right as the game itself is going live and is thus out now. But with that out of the way, let's actually dive into this and talk about some of the mechanics and things you can expect from it. So we play through the game as a Ronin returning to the districts of Bakugawa. Tomoe, our lead character, is someone who had lived here in the past, but following a period of strife decided to leave and is now seen as a deserter and a coward by the people she left behind, including friends and even some family members. Upon our return to the area, however, we learn that everything has not gone well in our absence, with the immediate vicinity being under attack by bandits, and as we deal with that problem, protecting an old friend we run into, we learn pretty quickly that these bandits are here because they have been exiled from the proper city area by the corrupt military regime that has taken over. And we're going to have to, of course, step in and deal with that situation to protect our friends and inspire the entire area to fight back against these violent means. But that's where things get a little more interesting as well, because Tomoe here has seen more than her fair share of blood and wishes to not spill any more of it again, and thus chooses to take a very non-lethal approach to combat. This means a lot of things like parrying and key attacks designed to stun rather than kill, and that's where the game's bulk of combat mechanics really comes into play. So let's get into some of that. Now, at a very base level, we simply have a counter that we can perform, which forms our sort of primary attack. Now, this parry or counter has to be done as an enemy attacks you and flashes white on screen. This will of course avoid you getting hit, but also allow you to deal damage back to the enemy as well. But when they flash red, that's an attack that you cannot counter or do anything about, and thus you just need to get out of the way of it. But that's not everything, of course. There will be other things we have to learn and deal with, starting with key attacks. So parrying isn't our only method of approach here. We do get key attacks, which allow you to simply attack the enemy and eat into their stamina bar. And if you manage to destroy all of it that way, you can stun the enemy, allowing you to perform your counter attack into them, which will effectively act as a big hit. So you do have some other options besides just straight up parrying everything. And while our basic key attack is simply a punch animation, you do get others via the form of secret techniques. Now, these are much more sparse, of course, as you would expect, but you can learn techniques to amplify your key attacks and perform special moves with them. The first one you get is a much larger arc that can hit multiple enemies at once, but the catch is these techniques come at the cost of your key pedals, and you recharge those by disarming and disabling enemies as you perform well in combat, so you have to use those a bit more sparingly as compared to the base key attack. But we're not done yet, of course. So what happens when you inevitably take some damage? Well, you do have a few points of health, and we'll talk upgrades here in a moment, so you do have a few options for a margin of error there, but that's also where your healing items come in via your gourd. So early on, you'll be able to make tea of varying types that will do different things for you. Now, the very base one just, of course, restores your health points. However, there are others such as tea that will give you unlimited stamina for a short time, that kind of thing. And later on, you even get a miniature version of a gourd so you can sort of mix and match some of these tea types as you go. But brewing that tea, alongside the setup for your combat abilities and the like, is all done at these braziers, or checkpoints if you will, that if you happen to fail and die, you'll be reset at, so you can try again. Now, that's not the only bit of customization. In fact, we have a bit more, because if you manage to clear particularly difficult combat encounters, we can also pick up skill gems. Skill gems are, of course, going to give us passive benefits to our overall combat style, and also just general improvements. A very easy one is, for instance, how quickly you can drink the tea you use to power up Tomoe. We can also set ourselves up to use any crests we've accumulated up to this point as well. So crests are kind of like equipable items that you can find and are rewards for things like side content that will also provide benefits to all the various things you can do in combat. Now, alongside all of those challenging encounters, you'll of course be picking up a currency. Now, you can spend this gold on upgrades at the tea house to all sorts of stuff such as your max health, stamina, or key pedals, allowing you to do more without having to stop and rest. So all of that combines to make a combat system that has a fair bit of depth to it, I would say. And that's before you even start looking at different enemy types, as they're all, of course, going to throw different attacks at you with different attack patterns that need to be countered and approached in a certain way. Some enemies are very easily dealt with by simply punching them with key attacks very quickly. Other enemies, after their initial defeat, will suddenly throw a projectile at you that you then have to dodge or get hit by their own counterattack of sorts. And then there are larger enemies still that have to be hit more than once while you dodge their larger attacks. And then later on, the game starts introducing variables to these things via more color-coded enemies with different attack patterns. Which brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk about with this game, which is its approach to color. One thing I thought was neat about this game was how it approaches its retro graphic style by using color at opportune moments to either highlight the story that it's being told or the color coordination of enemies you're fighting and what their attack patterns are going to be. And while those are all certainly big core mechanics, you definitely don't want to forget about everything else this game is trying to do with the story it's telling and the exploration and things. So there are a lot of different places you can go to explore. There's even side content and quests to be had, which rewards you with all those different customization options afforded to you by the combat system itself. To give a specific example, relatively early on, you have the opportunity to backtrack to an area you had just been to in order to clear some more challenging fights, and the reward for that specific experience is actually a key to a locked off section you would have passed earlier, and this gave me access to a brand new crest in the form of one that would allow me to sprint at a reduced cost to my stamina. And seeing how stamina is important in combat for the sake of performing your counters, and of course positioning something like that is just generally very helpful. So even outside of the main narrative, there will be opportunities to explore and find little things like that. The map itself is relatively open. It is divided up into small areas that you can then travel between. But yet another thing you can actually find or be rewarded with along the way are statues. You can use these at the braziers to initiate a sort of combat challenge that comes with a reward naturally, but this pits you in a very specific combat scenario based on whatever your current loadout is, to use as another method to, of course, gain some unique rewards, or in some cases just some gold. Giving you one more opportunity to engage with the game's, I would say, pretty challenging combat. Challenges that you will ultimately need to master in order to accomplish our main goal of reaching the Shogun. So whether it's engaging with the tale of Tomoe and her return to Bakugawa, or exploring the districts of the area, learning more about its populace and people and the events that happened so long ago that led to the current state of affairs, there's a fair bit to get up to in this game, and the combat especially has a pretty decent skill ceiling as you trial and error your way through various customization options in pursuit of your broader goals. But speaking for myself, what I liked about this game and ultimately why I decided to take the sponsorship for it was how much I enjoyed the positioning involved in combat and how much they bring the environment into it. So early on, you'll see things like spike bushes and everything, or just a general constraint on your ability to move around, which affects how well you can, of course, dodge or engage with certain individual abilities of your enemies, making positioning especially important. And then learning all of their counterattacks and how they might come at you even after you've already hit them are things that felt really compelling about the experience to myself. So for all those reasons, I thought the game was worth the highlight. And to that exact end, if you're looking at this game and thinking that it's the exact kind of thing you'd probably want to play on the Steam Deck, which was my own thoughts about it, you're in good luck there, as well as the game is verified on Steam Deck, has controller support, cloud saves, it plays very well there. In fact, if you're on PC, it might be the best way to play it, as the game does play much better with a controller, unsurprisingly, given the mechanics. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But I think that's pretty much where we're going to wrap up this particular video. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do remember that there is a link in the description below where you can and learn more for yourself, and there's a demo available on Steam if you want to play it firsthand before making a decision. And while you're checking out the description, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.